Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Did you watch your favorite Kentucky Derby?
Oh my God, I didn't watch.
You didn't watch? You love the Kentucky Derby. How'd you miss it?
I started to watch like the build-up, and of course they're still trying to do a 3-hour like pre-race without the people in the stands and all the women with the giant hats and the mint julep. It's just like there's just no point in the whole thing.
I would say there's no point even with all of that other stuff, but that's just me.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, today we're going to talk about our favorite mascots, but before we get into that, there's actually something that's bugging me. We haven't done a What Bugs Me in a while.
Yeah. Well, you texted me yesterday saying you got a list of grievances, so I can't wait to hear them.
Well, we're only going to talk about one of them today. Otherwise, the show would be too long. So as you know, I recently spent a week in Montreal.
Yes, it was great to see you.
It was great to see you as well. So here's the thing. If you're driving in Montreal, it's actually dangerous to drive in Montreal without a smartphone. And I'm going to tell you why.
Is it because of the construction?
It's not because of the construction, although that is annoying.
Right.
It's dangerous to drive in Montreal without a smartphone because, and I should know this because I used to live there, the radio stations in Montreal suck.
Oh my God. When you said dangerous, I was like, okay, dangerous. Listen, the radio here is terrible.
I remember that it was, but I thought, how terrible could it actually be? Like I wanted to give it a shot, I'm not there all the time. I figure there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 stations you can flip between while you're driving.
No.
One of them must have something good, right?
Yeah. Well, especially for you. You want to listen to like alt rock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have one choice, and that's not even a Montreal station.
I know.
That's 99.9 The Buzz, which is over in Plattsburgh or Burlington somewhere, right?
And depending on where you are in Montreal, sometimes it doesn't come in clear at all.
Exactly. It's not like the perfect signal, but I mean, it's you used to listen to it. I mean, that's your only choice, right?
Right.
Other than that, you have Shome, which is the rock station, and there's no rock music now, so they don't have an identity, Shome, at all, actually. Mm-hmm. And then every other station, including the French stations, all play the same music.
Right.
Which is top 40. Every other station.
Like, what's his name? Bieber.
Yeah. Every other station is the same music. All of them. Well, that's why I don't listen to music. I don't listen to the radio here in terms of music. If I listen to the radio, I'm going on the AM and I'm listening to like TSN 690 or whatever, like news.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I got desperate at a certain point and I switched to AM and I listened to TSN radio.
Yeah.
And that was awful also because some of the guys, like, it happened to be around lunchtime that I was in the car. And so I'm listening to, I don't know, is it called Habs Lunch or whatever they call it? The show was just like, they kept talking about the same exact thing over and over again. And I mean, how long can you talk about, the fourth center on the Montreal Canadiens?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, the thing is right now, Montreal Sports Radio and maybe now Toronto is a little bit, but there's nothing to talk about, right? Because I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs are in the finals, so I don't know how much people here even want to talk about the Stars and the Lightning. And Montreal's not an NBA city, so there's not a lot of NBA talk. We don't have a baseball team, right? So, like, what are they talking? What are they going to talk about? And to top it all off, if they're like you and me, I get the feeling that me and you are not alone. We represent many fans' opinions. We're not as involved in sports. We don't care about it as much as we did 6 months ago, right? There's probably so many listeners that they had that are just not interested anymore, right? I mean, like I've watched maybe 10 seconds of the Stanley Cup final. Like, honestly, I've hardly watched it. I've followed along, but I've hardly watched it. I'm watching the NBA playoffs religiously. I must tell you. I'm watching both East and West, and I watch a little bit of NFL on Sunday because it's Sunday, right? But like I didn't watch any Thursday night or Sunday night or Monday night, and baseball, I had a note here to talk to you about baseball. The playoffs are going to start apparently like this week.
On Tuesday.
I didn't even realize. But the weirdest thing is I had a note to tell you is that I saw the standings and it was the first time in our life that the standings wasn't represented by games behind. I was thrown off. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Because they're showing winning percentage, because that's the tiebreaker, because teams are not going to play the same amount of games, right? So I was really thrown off by that. And I looked at the standings this morning to sort of try to see who's in the playoffs, but it's just weird. It's just, as you know, Josh, 2020 is weird, because this is we're almost on our 3-year anniversary of this show, right? And one thing that I've said every year at this time is how much I love the baseball playoffs. Baseball playoffs, you don't have to follow anything during the regular season, but the baseball playoffs are amazing. And I don't know if I'm going to watch.
Well, spoiler alert, there's more teams in the baseball playoffs this year than ever before, just so you know. So next time you look at the standings, you'll notice that, I hope.
Yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of teams in the playoffs, right? Like 16 teams or something.
I don't know how many, but there's more than there's 4 rounds this year.
And then apparently this is going to stay even when things go back to normal. I think they're going to keep the expanded playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do that, because as it is, the World Series, it's sometimes very cold during the World Series, depending on which team is in it. And if they have to play like into the first week of November, and let's say, I don't know, a team like New York or Philadelphia or Chicago is in the World Series,
yeah,
it's going to be tricky. Or I didn't even mention Minnesota.
Yeah, if they want the expanded playoffs, they're going to have to consider shortening the season, no? Which they're never going to want to do, but
or they play the World Series at a neutral site in Florida or California where the weather's nice.
Back to the radio. So I guess you listen to your phone, right? You listen to music on your phone in the car, right? Because that was your
or a podcast.
Or a podcast, right? Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So that's all that's bugging me for now.
Mailbag.
I have some listener mail from last episode.
Mm-hmm.
We did our Jerseys episode.
We did.
Jesse Jackson from Dallas, who is the host of the Bruce Springsteen themed Set Lusting Bruce podcast, which I recorded on since we last recorded. I recorded with Jesse, although he has a backlog of episodes, so the episode with me might not be available till like November. But he emailed me with his list of top jerseys, and of course he had Dallas Cowboys number 1. Anyways, I got no comment on that, but he did have an awesome one in his list of 7, which was McNeese State. And I just found it funny because when I was talking to him, I said, McNeese State. Oh yeah, perfect. He's like, you heard of them? I'm like, yeah, they're the 16th seed in the NCAA tournament.
He went to that school, right?
He went to that school. He went to McNeese State. So yeah, I said, hey, they're the 16th seed in the NCAA tournament. He's like, not only that, my son went to Stephen F. Austin. I'm like, oh, another 16th seed. Perfect.
Stephen F. Austin once beat Duke.
Typical Canadians we are, Josh. We know about our American universities and geography because of sports.
Right. Do you think any Americans have heard of the Concordia Stingers?
Well, no, of course not. I mean, and when we had our list of best announcers, and Jesse emailed me saying I don't know most of the people in your list. Like, he never heard of some of them. So that's just the way it goes, right?
Top 7 mascots.
All right, are you ready for mascots?
I'm ready for mascots. I think this was my topic, so I think that means I have to go first.
Before you give your list, maybe do 30 seconds of about the topic, maybe. First of all, we're a mascot friendly. Yeah, we're a mascot friendly show, as you know. We've mentioned that before. And if you're wondering, people are saying, what do you mean mascot friendly show? Because the Mascot Hall of Fame actually followed us on Twitter, which I had a huge laugh about. I love that.
We follow them.
Or we follow them too, yes. I was very skeptical about this whole topic. Actually, was going to tell you maybe we should change it and do something else. But then as I started to research it, I was having so much fun learning about the history of mascots and some of the antics and different things. I was like, oh, this is a great topic. So it's just kind of interesting. But, mascots, the modern day mascots only started in like the 60s and then really became popular in the 70s, which is what we're about to probably find out, because I have a feeling our lists may be similar. And but the history of the mascot goes way back into like the 1800s, but not mascots as we know them today. They were like just people wearing costumes, or actually mostly animals, like the Yale Bulldog or like the Notre Dame Leprechaun. Like, those mascots go back hundreds of years, right? And so the modern day mascots, which are the ones we're going to talk about, is more of a they are more of entertainers, whereas the mascots back in those olden days, like the Yale Bulldog and stuff like this, teams brought those dogs and cats and animals out as good luck. They were good luck charms, right? And then it sort of evolved into the mascots that we know today. So let's go. Let's hear. I can't wait to hear who's on your list.
That's quite the history lesson you just gave. You certainly did your research.
You know me. When I dive into a topic, I like to learn everything about it.
Number 7.
I guess number 7 on my list then, if I'm going to start.
Yes.
And most of the mascots that I picked on my list, I either, I like their appearance, or I like the team that they're affiliated with, or I like their colors. This one, the only reason I picked this one is because I actually met this mascot once. And so it's the Duke Blue Devil.
The Duke Blue Devil.
So yes, the reason I picked the Duke Blue Devil is because I met him or her. I don't really know who's in the costume, to be honest. Because we'll say he for now. He took a road trip with the team and came to Toronto a couple of years ago. So that's how I got to meet him. And he let me take a photo. He was very nice, very gracious. Mm-hmm. He's got an interesting costume, as you know, and sometimes he'll write something on a piece of tape and stick the tape on his forehead, and that changes, it seems like, every game.
Right. Mascot communication is key, right? Because they can't talk. So they have to find ways to communicate with their fans, right?
Exactly.
Using their gestures and other things. Yeah. Love it.
So he was born, if you can call it born, in the 70s.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Most of these mascots were born in the 70s.
And he looked a lot different when he was born than he does now. Like he had, I'm just looking at his costume that he had back then. And actually the D on the chest back then is the same D that Duke used on one of their uniforms this past season. I don't know if you remember, they used all these different uniforms.
Yeah, it's more like a throwback style. Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
All right, so my number 7, you're not going to like it, Josh.
How do you know?
Because you don't like anything about the Washington Nationals. Neither do I, to tell you the truth.
You're right, I don't.
So they're not the actual mascots, but they're the presidents. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. But those aren't really, they're not the mascot of the team.
Well, I cheated. So the presidents. So, in 2006, they had these animated presidents on the scoreboard. And then eventually they changed them and they became actual costumed caricatures of some of the presidents of the United States. So do you know that they do a race in the 4th inning every year, every game in the 4th inning, and the 13th inning if necessary? So it's George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and then eventually Howard Taft was introduced, but then they stopped using him, and Calvin Coolidge raced for a single season. And the most famous thing about the race of the presidents is that Teddy Roosevelt failed to win a single race for almost 7 seasons. Even when they tried to give him an advantage and head starts, he still would not win.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. And then the presidents became very popular in Nationals games, and they've evolved from the race into sort of the mascots of the team, ambassadors for the team, because they often greet the fans and kids at the entrances of the ballparks before the game starts. So I don't usually have many good things to say about the Nationals, but I do get a kick out of the president race.
Okay, so now does that mean, and I didn't put these on my list, but the Pittsburgh Pirates, they do a sausage race.
No, the Brewers. The Pirates have a different race. The Pirates have the pierogi race.
Oh, right. Okay, yes. The Brewers do a sausage race.
Yeah, they're in my list. You're going to get them further up.
Oh, okay.
You can see I did my research.
Okay.
I found out about the pierogi race from Pittsburgh after researching the sausages.
All right. Wow, I'm in over my head today.
You are, I think. I thought you did a lot of research. We texted during the week, and I'm like, how's your list going? You're like, oh, it's going great. So I'm like, okay, me too.
Well, I mean, I had my mascots. I just didn't do all kinds of, background checks on them.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Number 6, for me, we're going to have, I think, some same mascots on our list.
Yeah. I feel like top 4 are going to be the same.
Maybe, but number 6, I'm pretty sure you don't have on your list. It's Bonhomme Carnaval.
Oh, that's a great one, Josh. I didn't even think about him.
So some facts about Bonhomme Carnaval. According to his website, His first name is Bonhomme. His last name is Carnaval. He was born. This is what it says here. He was born in 1954 in Quebec City. He's huge, by the way. He's 7 feet tall, and apparently he weighs 400 pounds. It says 400 pounds of packed snow.
God.
So you can't take him down. Like, he's too big.
Yeah, he's too big.
He's very cute. He wears a red hat with a pom-pom. He's been at the Quebec Carnival, since the mid-50s.
All right, my number 6 is Mr. Met.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets.
That's a good one. I considered him.
You did? Like...
Because he's a baseball. He looks so goofy.
Yeah, he's weird because he's just a guy with a baseball for a head, right? So it's like the most like weirdly conceived mascot in terms of look, but it's because he started in the 60s, actually, Mr. Met, right? They invented him in 1962, but he was just like a cartoon character that they would put on like programs and advertising, like in print. And then in 64, they decided to dress up a guy in a costume with a baseball on his head. Which is pretty funny. And he's very, very popular in New York. In April of 2012, Forbes magazine listed Mr. Met as the #1 mascot in all of sports.
That's quite the honor.
Yeah. So he only gets number 6 on our list, but Forbes had him #1. So already I cast out on Forbes.
If I'm not mistaken, he doesn't have 5 fingers like you and I. He has less.
There was something that came out a few years ago about like all this weird trivia about Mr. Met, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways.
Number 5.
So next for me on my list is the San Diego Chicken.
Ah, yeah.
Now, I thought, before I did some research, that the San Diego Chicken was the San Diego Padres mascot, and he was.
I thought that too. Yeah.
He was for a time, but not all the time. Like, in fact, now I don't think he is the San Diego Padres mascot at the moment. He was for a few years, and then apparently the guy who was in the mascot got sued, and they fired him, and they hired a new person, and the fans didn't like the new person at all, even though they couldn't see the person, so I don't know why they didn't like him. But really, the San Diego Chicken started because of the chicken place called KGB. Sorry, the radio station called KGB. That's how the chicken got started. That was his origin. It's an FM radio station in San Diego.
Right. And then I read this, and then the chicken started doing promotional events, and he started getting popular, and he started doing events at the zoo, and then all of a sudden he's at games, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, he wanted to try to find a way to go to Padres games for free, so he figured if I wear this costume, maybe they'll let me in. And they did. Yeah. And then eventually he's doing stuff on the field, and the fans are loving it because he's like impersonating the players and the umpires and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
that's the chicken.
Yes.
More on the chicken later.
Okay.
I have more.
Sorry, he was also in a Saturday morning children's television show.
Yeah, he was so popular. When we were kids, the San Diego Chicken was everything, no? He was everywhere. Yeah. Like, he was like the first like nationally known mascot. Like, he was the San Diego Chicken, but people all across the country, and obviously even in Canada, we knew about him, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you already mentioned my number 5, which is the Milwaukee Brewers sausages. Mm-hmm. So they have a similar story. They're actually the predecessor to the Presidents, because they started in 1990 as a scoreboard race, and then in 1992 became like in 1992 or starting early 93, they became live action mascots, and they actually surprised the fans with this, because the first, here I'll read it. On June 27th, 1993, as the sausages approached Milwaukee County Stadium on the scoreboard video, like it was going to be a normal race on the video screen, the left field doors swung open, and much to the surprise of players and fans, out came larger-than-life mascots. So that was the thing. So, by the way, in case anyone's curious, so this is a race that they do, at various points during the game. The sausages run around the field and entertain the fans. So, originally it was bratwurst, the Polish sausage, and the Italian sausage. And then eventually they had a hot dog join the race. And then to appeal to diversity, they added chorizo.
Fancy stuff here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the Brewers on the sausages. But it's really funny when you see the sausages running around on Sports Center. It's hysterical. I'd like to go to a Brewers game just for that.
Well, maybe we should make a road trip one day when we're allowed to go back in the United States.
Yeah, we should.
Number 4.
So next on my list, and again, this is another one I think is probably on your list, is the Philly Fanatic. So the Philly Fanatic is green, and apparently, according to his biography, he's originally from the Galapagos Islands.
I didn't know this.
I didn't know either, but he's also obviously the Phillies' biggest fan.
Right.
And so I don't know if I'm sure you've seen he'll ride on that little golf cart, between innings, and he'll annoy the opposing players, and he'll annoy the umpires.
His vehicle is really like part of his thing.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So apparently, also here's another thing. On August 2nd, 2019, the Phillies filed a lawsuit against the Fanatic creator for attempting to withdraw from the 1984 agreement to let them use the mascot forever.
I read that. Yeah. It's amazing how many of these mascots have lawsuits when you look up their Wikipedia page.
Right. And by the way, the name of the company that created the Philly Fanatic, and I think also created the San Diego Chicken, is called Acme Mascots. And we mentioned Acme on a previous episode.
Well, yeah, Acme. That's the Coyotes' number one choice.
That's where he gets all his ammunition.
That's the Coyotes' Amazon. That's the original Amazon, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
good timing, Josh, because my number 4 is also the Philly Fanatic.
Great.
You mentioned everything about him. He started in 1978, as did a lot of mascots started in the late 70s. And he's kind of the first mascot that actually was the reason why he became so popular is because he was so active. He was the first mascot that would actually taunt the opposing team's players, taunt their dugout, make fun of the managers, make fun of the umpires, right? Like to their faces, right? And before that, the mascots were more like cheerleaders. And then here you have the Fanatic, who sort of took active part in the game, in a way. So we're going to mention Tommy Lasorda. I'm sure we are in another, as we get higher up on this list.
Tommy Lasorda is big, but he's not a mascot.
No. In a 1988 game, Lasorda assaulted the Philly Fanatic during a nationally televised game after Fanatic stomped on a life-size dummy wearing Tommy Lasorda uniform, which was reportedly provided to the Fanatic by Dodgers second baseman Steve Sachs. So maybe Sachs is like a bit of a traitor, for collaborating with the Fanatic, but I don't know.
I love it.
Number 3.
So next on my list, and this one I'm going to guess you don't have on your list, it's Otto the Orange. And Otto the Orange is the mascot of the Syracuse Orange.
Oh, that's a good one.
Basketball team and football team and all their teams, really.
That's a good one. I didn't really look that much at the college mascots. Apparently you did. That's a good one. He's good, that Orange.
He is, because he's a round orange.
Yeah.
With a baseball hat. Like, what more do you want?
Did we've been to Syracuse to see NCAA tournament games. I don't remember ever meeting Otto the Orange.
I've never met him, but I did go...
Well, actually, Syracuse wasn't playing, even though the Syracuse team was never playing when we went, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Right, but I did go to a regular season game where Syracuse was playing against Duke.
Yeah.
And Otto the Orange was there. I didn't meet him or her.
You already have my number 3 on your list. That's the San Diego Chicken. You already talked about his origins, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that, he wasn't really always the mascot of a team. He was more of the mascot of just some guy trying to get a job, trying to get popular, and then eventually really did. So the stats I had in 2015, it's estimated that the Chicken had made 5,100 appearances in 917 different facilities, 50 states, 8 countries, wearing more than 100 chicken suits. So that's just to tell you about the popularity of the Chicken. For all you baseball card collectors, in the 1982, 83, and 84 Donruss Major League Baseball card sets, they included a card for the Chicken. And there was instructions on the back of the card where you could send it in and they would send it back to you autographed.
That's cool.
I don't know what a Chicken autograph looks like, but...
I wonder who keeps all those stats that you mentioned about how many appearances he does.
I don't know. It's probably that guy. It's the guy, because when you read about it, the guy who they sued the guy who they replaced. Sorry, they didn't sue. The guy who they replaced,
Right.
and then he's the reason why the chicken is slowing down now and not making as many appearances is because that guy's getting older, right? And he doesn't want to do as much,
So by the way, that guy, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name. It's Ted Giannoulas, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And he's Canadian.
Wow.
Or he was born in Canada.
Number 2.
I think our 1 and 2 definitely have to be the same. Maybe not in the same order, but they definitely have to be the same.
Right. And I mean, we've already had a few of the same.
Yeah.
So number 2 for me is, I mean, you're no surprise here. It's Gritty.
Okay, so he's number 2 for me also. So we can combine our notes, right?
Okay. So I mean, whatever. Gritty's hilarious because he's got that room where the Flyers play, where he destroys stuff. And he's obviously, I mean, when it comes to social media, there's no mascot that's more popular than Gritty. He has so many followers. And by the way, I have 2 Philadelphia mascots on my list. I mean, who would have thought?
It's actually amazing. It just goes to show that the city of Philadelphia must really love their mascots, and especially the creation of Gritty, because Gritty's only been around since 2018, right? So
right, he's relatively young.
Yeah, he took the mascot world kind of by storm, no? Well, he's the first mascot to really he's the first mascot, and you give credit to the Flyers team, because they leveraged like a huge social media presence. They created this huge Twitter account, a whole social media presence around Gritty, and it really worked because they did it really well,
Apparently, according to his bio, he's related to the Philly Fanatic. I don't know how, but apparently he is.
Related?
Yes. It says related mascots, Philly Fanatic.
Okay.
I mean, I guess mascots can have brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, right?
Right. I guess.
Anyhow, he's 7 foot, which is tall.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have his weight listed here.
I told you I went to a couple of Flyers games in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned this before. He's really the focal point at Flyers games. Like, the whole marketing of Flyers games really revolves around Gritty. Like, he's front and center on everything that they're doing on the scoreboard, in the intermissions, pregame, postgame, everything. It's really quite interesting. Like, I know we're joking around about stupid stats about mascots and everything, but like, it's the Flyers, the way they've created Gritty and the way they've created his persona and the guy who's in the costume, it's really quite brilliant, to be honest. Like, really, like, deserve a lot of credit. The quote from the Flyers organization around Gritty is, they wanted Gritty to have a rather intimidating appearance as someone you'd high-five but not hug.
You know that he was sued once because apparently a fan claimed that Gritty assaulted his son. Not Gritty's son,
all
but the
charges
fan's
were
son.
dropped. That whole thing was a hoax, I think.
Yes.
That whole thing was like a publicity stunt by the dad or something. The whole thing was not... He was falsely accused, let's just say. No?
Yeah.
Number 1.
All right, so we have the same number 1.
We must have the same number 1.
It's Youppi. It has to be Youppi.
It's Youppi, because this is why I wanted to do this list in the first place.
Right. And people are going to say we're homers because we're from Montreal and Youppi and blah, 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 blah. He is in the Mascot Hall of Fame. He was voted in the Mascot Hall of Fame this year, and he is deserving to be in the Mascot Hall of Fame. We talk about Bo Jackson, the best 2-sport athlete, or Deion Sanders, who played in an NFL game and a Major League Baseball game, on the same day. But what about Youppi? He's the only 2-sport mascot. Right. Well, I mean, the chicken, like we said, the chicken has represented, and the chicken's been at football games and baseball games and everything. But we're talking about the official mascot of 2 teams, and that's Youppi.
By the way, it was very costly for the Montreal Canadiens to acquire Youppi. It cost 6 figures.
Are you serious?
That's
but
what I read.
But they had to buy him from who? They had to buy him from the Nationals?
From Major League Baseball, I think.
Oh my God, that's nonsense, no?
I know. And apparently at one time before the Canadiens acquired him, the Montreal Alouettes were looking into acquiring him.
That would be great. Imagine the 3-sport athlete. That would be amazing. A 3-sport mascot. That would be amazing. Although, the Owls have their own mascots. The 2 guys. What's their name?
Touche and Blitz.
And Blitz. Yeah, exactly. The 2 little birds.
By the way, Youppi was also created by the company called Acme Mascots.
Oh, that's nuts. Who is this company, Acme Mascots?
I guess all they do is create mascots.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
They should be a sponsor of this episode.
They should. So, I mentioned Tommy Lasorda before. And Youppi's other claim to fame, other than his jersey number being an exclamation point, which is always very funny. Mm-hmm. He was the first mascot to be thrown out of a Major League Baseball game, which happened in the 89 season, August 23rd. He was on top of the visiting dugout, and in the 11th inning, he was jumping around and running on the dugout, and then Tommy Lasorda, Dodgers manager, complained, and Youppi was ejected by umpire Bob Davidson, although he later returned. And by the way, I don't know if you remember that game, but it's a very famous 22-inning game.
Tommy Lasorda has put up a complaint. They want Youppi off the Dodger dugout. He's bugging the Dodger players. This will draw the ire of the fans. Youppi's been thrown out of the game, off the Dodgers dugout. Calling somebody from security over.
They're going to call security and remove him from the ballpark.
Of course I remember that game, yes.
1-0 in 22 innings. I still remember watching like the last 10 innings of that game and just wanting to just strangle the Expos manager. Like I couldn't handle it.
A friend of ours was watching the game at home or listening to the game on the radio, and when the game went into extra innings, he decided to go to the game, and he went, and he only got there like in the 10th inning.
Right,
and he still saw more than a full game.
Absolutely. Perfect. So that's Youppi. Youppi's number one. He deserves it. He's always number one in our hearts. And like, just to get serious for a second, Josh, just for 1 second, because I used to think that Youppi was stupid. The mascots were dumb. What was the point of these? And then when the Habs acquired Youppi, well, actually, like you said, they bought him. People in this city lost their minds. They were complaining about it. Like that. Why do the Canadians need a mascot? The Canadians have this strong tradition. You know how the Canadians are here in this city. It's like they're put on this ridiculous pedestal. I mean, and I'm sure I've told you this story before. And Roger Brulotte, who was one of the French, the French color commentator for Expos games, came on the radio and told a story about Youppi that forever changed my impression of the purpose of a mascot, which was Roger Brulotte was with the Expos and they went to go visit sick children in a hospital, like teams do, right? And Youppi was part of that. And Roger Brulotte was in a room with a family with a sick child, and Youppi came into the room, and the kid said, "Youppi." He sat up in bed and said, "Youppi," and the mother of the child started crying, and Roger Brulotte said, "What's going on?" Then he found out that that child had not spoken for 3 years, had not said a word, and Youppi came into the room. And I mean, you don't know what goes on in the mind of a child, but like, if anything, if you have anything to say about why Youppi or mascots, just remember this story, because they do make a difference for kids.
That's an amazing story. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, this was on the radio because when the Habs acquired him, people lost their minds, and Roger Brulotte came on and said, "No, no." There's positive about this, So,
by the way, one other note about Youppi that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
He is one of only 3 mascots featured as displays at the Baseball Hall of Fame. And
really?
The others are the Philly Fanatic and the famous chicken from San Diego.
Well, those are the 3 most famous baseball mascots, although Mr. Met, I mean, yeah, anyways, yeah, that's great. But the chicken, when you look up the history of this, the chicken spawned all this. The chicken became really popular in the 70s, and then in the late 70s, all the Major League Baseball teams got mascots, right? That's when Youppi, the Fanatic, all of them were born. The Pirate, anyways, we're going to get into the honorable mentions now. We'll see what you have, right?
Well, I've already mentioned my honorable mentions, but we can talk about them anyway. I'll list them
I
off.
only have 3 honorable mentions.
Yeah, I only have 3 or 4 as well.
2 of them are NBA mascots. Benny the Bull, who's the Chicago Bulls mascot.
Right.
Who actually is in the Mascot Hall of Fame. I was surprised to see. and the Phoenix Suns gorilla. And so the Benny the Bull and the Phoenix Suns gorilla were famous for like jumping on trampolines and dunking, before games and entertaining the crowd. And then the other mascot that I had on my list was the pirate parrot.
Okay, that's not a bad one, actually.
Yeah. I know you mentioned the pierogi race, but the parrot is actually the real mascot. Yeah.
So my honorable mentions, Mr. Met is on my list. Mm-hmm. Blitz and Touche, who we mentioned, are on my list.
Yeah.
And then the other one, who we haven't talked about, is, have you heard of the Crazy Crab?
The Crazy Crab? No, who is
So I thought the Crazy Crab was affiliated with Cleveland, but apparently the Crazy Crab was the San Francisco Giants mascot for only one season in 1984. And
never heard of him.
Really, the crab was meant as an anti-mascot, satirizing on the mascot craze that was going on at the time. And fans were encouraged to boo the mascot.
Oh my God. That's too wild.
Frank Robinson appeared in a commercial with the mascot, and Robinson in the commercial had to be restrained from attacking him.
Well, it's the only time Frank Robinson showed signs of life.
Most mascots, like if you see them, they look cute and cuddly and whatever.
Yeah.
You see a picture of the Crazy Crab, he's scary. You don't want to go anywhere near this thing.
Well, Gritty too. I mean, that's the purpose of Gritty. Is like
Gritty is much cuter than the Crazy Crab.
Yeah, Gritty looks more like a homeless Youppi,
That's right.
Yeah.
The crab looks like he just crawled out of the sea or something.
That's funny. I mean, when I researched this and I looked up list of mascots, like I hadn't heard of most of them,
I mean, and the fact that we actually spend time researching mascots.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. If you're a fan of the Columbus Blue Jackets, you know about their blue jacket or whatever he is. He's some kind of insect, But like, other than if you're a fan, how would you ever know about him,
Right, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter @skipandjosh, and go to facebook.com/skipandjosh to like the show page. To see links mentioned on today's episode, go to skipandjosh.com. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
All right, Josh, what have you got to close out the show with? Anything interesting?
Not really, except that, touching on something you said earlier, I did not watch any of the Stanley Cup Finals until yesterday. Yesterday, I watched one period of the game.
It was overtime, yeah?
I actually didn't watch the overtime. I watched the third period. I just don't really have any interest between Tampa and Dallas.
So I have a couple of small notes. Did you, I know you don't follow it, but did you hear about the Rolling Stone released their list of top 500 albums of all time?
I didn't know this at all.
Anyways. Okay. Well, just to tell you, like, it's kind of weird. Like, the reason why I wrote it, why I wanted to talk about it is because, like, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On was the number 1 album of all time. But the thing is, when they made their list in 2003, that album was number 6. And then the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper was number 24 this time. But last time they did the list, it was number 1. So it's interesting how the years go by and they get different panelists on their panel, of figuring out the list, and the numbers sort of change. But any fans of music should go and check out the list because it's interesting because they finally included a lot of current artists into their top 500 albums, whereas, previously it was mostly like classic rock. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you, and this is not going to mean anything to you, it's going to mean 0 to you, but in case there's any, because I've mentioned before I watch Top Chef when it's on. There's currently not a current season of it, but that's a show that I like to watch. So I did for all the Top Chef fans out there, I did a Zoom cooking class with Michael and Brian Voltaggio, both of Top Chef fame. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. And even though the recipe was incredibly difficult, I think it came out pretty well.
Did you make enough for the whole family?
I made enough it was enough for the whole family, although Matthew didn't want any part of it.
Why? Why not?
There was no meat. Matthew's like, if it doesn't have meat, Matthew doesn't really consider it.
I can understand that.
Yeah. This is episode 198.
Yeah.
And our 200th episode is going to very closely align with our 3-year anniversary.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I think episode 201 will probably be the 3-year anniversary. So it actually works out really, really well.
Are you sure? Because I thought, because it's now late September, and I thought we did our first episode in September.
We did. Well, we can make the anniversary whenever we want, because technically I think the first episode was released on November 3rd.
That late.
But we started recording and re-recording, and we recorded 3 episodes and until we actually got everything online, it was November 3rd. But yeah, we were recording, I think, in September or definitely October. I mean,
well, no, we definitely started recording in September. I remember.
So, anyways, happy anniversary to us, and also happy New Year to all our Jewish listeners. And
I hope you have
an easy fast. I don't know if you're fasting, but if you do, Josh, have an easy one on Monday.
Thanks, you too.
All right, speak to you in 2 weeks.
Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy this nice weather while it lasts.
I'm going to, yes.